Picture this. An 18-year-old victim is bleeding out on the street while his killer is actively manipulating the system with fabricated claims. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the deeply tragic murder of Henry Nowak. It's a case that has absolutely ignited a nationwide debate about systemic failures, cultural misunderstandings, and just the sheer chaotic realities of street crime. We're going to break down the facts from the trial and the resulting investigations to understand exactly what happened and why this has triggered such a massive national response. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive right into this with a heartbreaking reality. Outside the courtroom, Henry's father, Mark Nowak, shared that his son did not die with dignity because he lost consciousness before anyone believed him. This quote really anchors everything we're about to discuss. It establishes the core, heart-wrenching controversy of the whole case. An 18-year-old victim spending his final moments not getting urgent medical care but literally being treated as a criminal suspect. To understand how such a profound breakdown in protocol and, honestly, human decency occurred, we need to go back to the beginning. Section 1. The night of the attack. So let's establish the baseline facts of what happened that night on the streets of Southampton. The victim was Henry Nowak, a young, much-loved first-year university student originally from Essex. At around 11:30 p.m. on December 3rd, 23-year-old Vickrum Digwa was out on Belmont Road. He was completely sober, but he was carrying a massive 21-centimeter blade in a sheath on his belt. Shortly after, Henry was walking back to his dorm after a night out, and just for context, the court later confirmed Henry was actually below the drink-drive limit. Then, the unprovoked attack happens. While there were no direct eyewitnesses to the stabbing itself, the forensics tell a grim story. Nowak was stabbed 5 times. We're talking wounds to the back of his legs, his face, and a fatal wound to his chest. Desperate to survive, the teenager actually tried to escape by climbing over a fence, leaving a terrible trail of blood behind him. Section 2. A tragic misjudgment. The violence was horrific, right? But what happened immediately after the police arrived is what elevated this case into a full-blown national scandal. Now, what's really interesting about this is the tragic dichotomy the police were presented with. See, before officers even got there, Digwa's brother made a deceptive 999 emergency call. So when police arrived, Digwa immediately claims he's the victim. He insists he was racially abused by Nowak, that he acted in self-defense, was injured, and that his turban was knocked off. But the reality? Entirely different. Nowak was totally unarmed, bleeding profusely from 5 stab wounds, and literally fighting for his life. In the sheer chaos of an extremely complex crime scene, the police had to make a split-second decision on who to believe. The result of that decision is captured in some truly harrowing police body cam footage, which the Nowak family bravely permitted to be released. While the police were busy investigating Digwa's false claims of racial abuse, Henry Nowak lay on the ground. On the recording, you can hear him pleading, saying multiple times, "I've been stabbed and I can't breathe." When officers arrived, they were already primed by that deceptive emergency call, so they focused their initial attention on Digwa. And then it comes the moment that sparked national outrage. Officers turned the unresponsive Nowak onto his side and handcuffed his hands behind his back. As the dying teenager lost consciousness, an officer formally arrested him for assault. It was only after a couple of minutes of Nowak being completely unresponsive that police finally called an ambulance. Just like his father said, the killer was afforded decency and never handcuffed, while the dying victim was treated as the aggressor. Section 3. Justice and the verdict. 21. That is the minimum number of years Vickrum Digwa will spend in prison after being handed a life sentence for the murder of Henry Nowak. The courtroom findings painted a really disturbing picture. The prosecution revealed Digwa had a deep weapons obsession. In fact, when police searched his family home, they found more than 20 other weapons. Plus, the judge entirely dismissed Digwa's claims that Nowak was a racist, violent aggressor. He called it a wicked lie that only compounded the terrible grief of Henry's family. And the trial implicated Digwa's family, too. His mother, Kieran Kaur, was found guilty of assisting an offender after she tried to hide the murder weapon. Ultimately, the judge condemned Digwa, stating unequivocally that he brought shame upon his family and his religion. Section 4. Weapon versus religious artifact. So, the crucial point here is a highly sensitive legal complexity that emerged during the trial regarding the weapon itself. Under Section 139 of the UK's Criminal Justice Act, 1988, it's actually a valid defense for a person carrying a blade in public to prove they had it with them for religious reasons. Digwa claimed he was carrying that 21-centimeter blade as part of his Sikh faith. However, the law is also crystal clear. The moment that item is used in an act of violence, it totally ceases to be a protected religious article and legally becomes an offensive weapon. But the cultural context goes even deeper. The Sikh Federation actually publicly stepped in to clarify that the enormous blade used by Digwa was absolutely not a traditional ceremonial kirpan. They heavily condemned the Crown Prosecution Service for failing to make this critical distinction clear during the trial itself. Because that distinction wasn't made clear, the fallout was severe. As the judge noted, Digwa's actions and his fabricated claims of racism inadvertently stirred up racial tensions across the whole country. The Sikh Federation stated that the broader community has felt demonized and left worried about their safety, all because a killer falsely hid behind their religion to justify carrying a deadly weapon. Section 5. The National Fallout. The systemic failures exposed by this single tragedy really resonated across the entire political spectrum. On an operational level, the local constabulary actually referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, or the IOPC. The local police and crime commissioner, Donna Jones, didn't hold back, calling it a national tragedy and stating the police response raised serious questions about impartiality, fairness, and judgment. At the very highest level of government, Prime Minister Keir Starmer took to social media to call the case shocking, officially backing the IOPC probe and urging an end to the cycle of knife crime. Meanwhile, internationally, the case caught the attention of prominent right-wing figures, including Elon Musk, who used the incident to publicly criticize the UK's current knife laws. The reaction is deeply polarized, for sure, but it really underlines how profoundly this case struck a nerve regarding justice and public safety. Which brings us to a vital question. When officers step into the total chaos of a violent crime scene, surrounded by conflicting stories and desperate lies, how do we systematically ensure impartiality and accurate judgment? Henry Nowak's family shouldn't have had to fight for the truth of his final moments. As we await the results of the IOPC investigation, this case stands as a tragic, undeniable reminder of what happens when the system fails to listen to the very people it's supposed to protect. So what do you think needs to change to ensure true justice in the crucial seconds after a crime? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning how our systems operate under pressure.